A record daily and weekly number of new COVID-19 cases, as well as a high active case count, forced the Bermuda government to implement tougher, more intense restrictions that were implemented on Sunday, and announcing the measures, which include a ban on indoor activity that requires people to remove their masks. Premier David Burt said the British Overseas Territory was in a dangerous place. Now, the new regulations went into effect at 6 a.m. on Sunday, and they include the closure of indoor gyms, cinemas, and museums. Retail stores are now restricted to 20% capacity, and indoor dining is prohibited, except for hotels, which can only serve guests. Now, remote working will also be mandatory, where, of course, it's possible to do so. Churches are also closed, except for funerals, when only 10 members of the clergy or those responsible for streaming service will be allowed. Premier Burt spoke about the changes on Saturday, as officials reported 81 new cases, the most ever in a single day. Now, that number contributed to the highest number of confirmed cases in a single week. The new cases also resulted in a record number of active cases, 294. And the total number of COVID-19 cases since the start of the pandemic has also now surpassed the 1,000 mark, reaching 1,028 on Saturday. The premier said it was disheartening the country is in this situation.
Our island is at a serious juncture. Our public health system is being significantly challenged. The teams are struggling to keep up with contact tracing, struggling to keep up with the work which is necessary in order to control this outbreak. And the severity of this outbreak and its impact on individuals and our healthcare system can be further magnified if we do not arrest its current spread. We are at a dangerous place, and what is important is that over the next 2 weeks, people observe the restrictions that are in place, and if we find that we may need to take stronger action, then we'll do so.
And Health Minister Kim Wilson added that while the new measures might seem harsh, they were in the best interest of residents, and she's urging everyone to comply.
We're all in this together, and we have to recognize that we have a very, very serious problem, and we all need to be part of the solution. Everyone must do their best to prevent further spread and prevent more critical illness and death from this third wave, which is presently on track to be larger than the second wave because of the UK variant spreads easily and is spreading incredibly fast throughout our community.
We start today with our Alanis Quinones, who brings us a story of a Puerto Rican swimmer that broke 3 national records, winning 3 gold medals in the South American Championships celebrated in Argentina. Take a look.
This Puerto Rican swimmer started swimming when he was just 3 years old to improve his lungs because he suffered from asthma. Now he's 25 years old and he's making Puerto Rico proud after breaking 3 national records and winning 3 gold medals in the South American Championships.
Por carril 3, Chesiel Morales Miranda, Puerto Rico.
I connected with the sport through my condition. I have asthma. So I had to start swimming when I was really young. I started swimming at 3 years old. And my brothers were already in the sport. So it was kind of like a tradition for me to go to the pool just to watch them swim and go to competitions.
Asthma is not his only condition. He also battled colitis growing up, but none of these obstacles stopped him from accomplishing his biggest dreams.
I broke actually 3 national records and I won 3 gold medals. So that's why I was the most happy about. I was able to do something that it was always a goal of mine and I could never achieve it before. So I did what they call a clean sweep. So I won the 50, 100, and 200 backstroke in the South American Games. And now that was a dream come true for me.
The South American Championship celebrated in Argentina was actually his first international competition since 2019, and he definitely made the best of it.
I felt really fortunate to be back in the international stage representing Puerto Rico, which I love. I always represent Puerto Rico, and I have to say Bayamón, that's my hometown. I love Bayamón, and I'm always fortunate. Like when I put my Puerto Rico uniform on, I feel like I'm blessed, and I am there to represent not just Puerto Rico but my family, and I was really happy to be there in Argentina and perform for my country.
Por cancha 3 el puertorriqueño en primer lugar.
He also highlighted the importance of paying attention to your mental health because it is as important as your physical one. We'll definitely stay tuned to his development and we wish him the best of luck. Reporting from Puerto Rico, Alanis Quiñones.
Well, in the U.S. Virgin Islands, the U.S. territory continues to make progress with COVID-19 vaccinations throughout the islands, as well as keeping the COVID rate down. Health officials addressed that positive news and much more at the governor's news conference on Monday. And reporter Ali Born-Vanek has all the details.
There are several updates with COVID in the territory. First, the number of active cases has gone down to 55 cases. Second, health officials are reporting that the territory has administered more than 25,000 vaccination shots. This is on track of the territory's goal of having 50,000 vaccination shots by July. Also, there are several new developments when it comes to travel. The Department of Justice is reporting that dozens of fraudulent tests have been uploaded to the VI's travel portal. Here's more.
In these trying times of the COVID pandemic, we are all responsible for keeping each other safe from sickness. That is why it was particularly disturbing to find out that some Virgin Islanders, and primarily Virgin Islanders, are intentionally putting their fellow residents at risk of infection from a potentially deadly virus. We are the ones who should care most for each other. We are the ones who should be going out of our way to protect each other. There is simply no excuse for this behavior. And make no mistake about it, submitting false documents to the government of the Virgin Islands is criminal behavior. Falsifying test results for submission to the government of the Virgin Islands is criminal behavior. In accordance with this policy announcement, the Attorney General has directed that henceforth anyone submitting forged documents or false test results through the travel screening portal will be prosecuted. We have identified 2 Virgin Islands statutes that are applicable. Section 843 of Title 14, entitled False and Fraudulent Statements upon the Government, makes it a crime for anyone in any matter within the jurisdiction of any agency of the government of the Virgin Islands to knowingly and willfully falsify, conceal, or cover up by any trick, scheme, or device a material fact, or to make any false or fraudulent statement or representation in such matters. Violators under Section 843 face a fine of up to $500 or imprisonment of up to 2 years, or both the fine and imprisonment. Section 795 of Title 14 of the Virgin Islands Code is also applicable. Section 795 relates to the filing of and recording of forged instruments. That statute criminalizes the procuring or offering of any false or fraudulent instrument to be filed or recorded in any public office within the Virgin Islands. Violators under Section 795 will face a fine of up to $1,000 and can be imprisoned for up to 5 years.
And for the upcoming Easter weekend holiday, the Bryan administration is encouraging everyone to stay as safe as possible and to still social distance, as many like to come together during holiday celebrations. In St. Thomas, Ali Born-Vanek, USVI News.
And the latest now on getting cruise ships sailing once again. 1 year after coronavirus outbreaks on ships docked the whole cruise industry, plans are in place to set sail once again. As we've been reporting, Royal Caribbean will start to sail again this summer with its new port in the Bahamas rather than the U.S. And experts say pent-up demand could signal some relief for companies struggling to stay afloat.
The first major coronavirus outbreak happened last February on board the Diamond Princess in Japan. 700 people were infected and ultimately 9 died as passengers were left stranded on board for weeks on end. A year later, most cruise lines are still docked, while many of their crews waited out at sea. Captain Kate McHugh has been on board this Celebrity Edge ship for a total of 320 days off the coast of the Bahamas.
A lot of times I get the question, how come you don't just dock the ship and everybody go home? And the reason why is because if you rest, you rust. So we're all here maintaining the ship. We went from a crew of 1,320. Currently, we're 107 on board.
The job losses have added up. More than 50% of U.S. jobs tied to the cruise industry have been lost. Despite the suspension, loyal cruise travelers are eager to get back on board. Review site Cruise Critic saw a more than 55% increase in cruise shoppers in the first 2 months of 2021.
What you're seeing is enthusiasm about the pace of the vaccine coming out.
But the $150 billion industry is making changes. COVID testing on board, required temperature checks, the beloved buffet no longer self-serve, and sailings will be much shorter, at least in the beginning.
A lot of them have their own islands in the Bahamas, which are essentially a bubble where they can control the vaccinations, they can control the testing, and naturally we're going to need Mexico.
Vaccines could be what ultimately gets the cruise lines back to sea. Norwegian Cruise and Royal Caribbean now requiring all crew to be vaccinated, but the industry's still deciding whether they'll do the same with passengers.
And again, though, for U.S. ports and cruise travel, it's up to the CDC to decide when ships can set sail again. Well, we start today in Puerto Rico, where more than half of what's consumed on the island is imported. And today, our Alanis Quinones reminds us why it's so important to take care of the crops that are grown on the island.
At least 80% of what Puerto Ricans consume is important. Right now, we're here in Finca Campo Alegre, all the way in Barceloneta, where they produce pineapple, and they tell us the importance of taking care of the products that are produced in our lands.
There's a process. So basically, we have 5 steps, right? You have to adequacy, adapt the land, then you go to the planting the seed, and then you do the attention to the crop, and basically there you're ready for harvest.
Campo Alegre has 600 acres, of which 400 are subdivided in soil beds and used to grow the pineapples, which take at least 13 months before collecting season. When they are ready, it can be decided whether the harvest will be used for seeds or for distribution.
You have an option. Our plants can have 1 or 2 pineapples, and that's a whole cycle, right? So you have 13 months, you get the first harvest, and then you decide if you want that plant to become the second harvest or use the seed that comes from the plant. And we divide the farm that way. We have areas that are all for seed, growth, and others are for first and second harvest.
The farm first started importing their seeds, but they wanted to explore the possibility of using Puerto Rican ones. This backfired when workforce started lacking.
If you have less hands, so it's more difficult to produce the seed, because you need more people to be in each of the plants taking it out. So it's easier to just do the harvest and then clean up and bring the seeds and plant like you have here. We don't want that. We want to produce our own seed, but that's one of the issues of having less people.
Regarding the lack of workforce, Campo Alegre began collaborations with entities like Hogar Crea, a non-profit organization dedicated to the prevention and treatment of drug addiction. They provide citizens who are eager to work and have not been provided the opportunity. Remember to visit their social media at Finca Campo Alegre in order to support all of the products we grow here in our lands in Puerto Rico. Reporting from Barceloneta, Alanis Quinones.
University of the Virgin Islands has officially launched new sustainability efforts to support the territory's environment. It's now hosting community glass bottle collections at the end of each month to be processed in their new glass crushing machines. These machines arrived at the Marine Science Center earlier this year, and they're helping to reduce waste in the territory.
As they bring the glass bottles, we'll separate them by color, and then we drop them off at the Marine Science Center where we do our actual crushing. So today is just strictly here for drop off, and then we do the crushing somewhere else. We have over 30 plus years of beach cleanup data, and consistently plastic bags and straws do not end up in the top 10 items that we find when we do these cleanups. We find generally beverage bottles, plastic, glass, the bottle caps, maybe cigarette butts. So those are the things that we find the most of, either on our beaches, our coastlines, mangrove shorelines, roadsides. That's the type of debris we're finding. So being able to take this, what would otherwise be thrown in the garbage, and actually turning it into something that can be used. So this is the end product. So this is sand created from the glass that we crushed. These are the cullets, the small fragments, and this is all safe to handle. So I can touch this with my hands without risk of being injured or cut. Same with the sand. All the sandbags that you see holding our tents down right now, those have been produced with the same sand that we crushed from glass. So this is one way in which we're able to take waste and keep it out of the landfill, which is already operating at close to near full capacity.
Now, like many people across the Caribbean, residents of Turks and Caicos are struggling amidst this pandemic, and government's trying to help with financial relief. And a recent stimulus check handout in Turks and Caicos got a bit chaotic. Our DeAndre Hamilton has more.
The government is saying there is no need to crowd the public treasury, but tell that to people who are financially starving amidst the coronavirus pandemic and are approved for a free $1,000 cash.
This government, the PNP government, Turks and Caicos Island, TCI James Brown, I have faith and believe and pray for you.
It was far more than they bargained for. Police were called in to help with physical distancing. It brought some order, but not much.
It's so congested. I think this is a COVID catcher.
The popularity of day one of the check distribution was crystal clear, many said, in the overwhelming number of people who applied for the cash. Ministry of Finance confirmed 15,210 people applied and 13,214 were approved. It's a citizens' relief measure announced 7 days after the Washington MISIC PNP government took office. And residents, once they got into the Treasury and out, were thankful.
I want to say thanks to Mr. Missick and his team for doing this for the people of the Turks and Caicos Islands. It was overdue. And I hope that if anything come up again, he can help us again.
But others looking on have labeled this a potential COVID-19 super spreader event. The premier, who was in Grand Turk, issued a statement. Please, I am urging the public not to crowd the collection venues if you do not fit the criteria for stimulus collection at this time. End of quote. At this time, those 60 years and older were to show up first, but it appears that is exactly who did. The physically disabled were allowed in ahead of others, and some entered and exited, sadly reporting they would have to come back as their checks were not yet ready. Distribution of the checks began in Providenciales and Grand Turk.
Well, there has been a reduction in seismic activity at the Le Soufriere volcano in St. Vincent, but residents have been told to remain on alert. Lead geologist Professor Richard Robertson said the affair there has days of elevated earthquake activity. Normal dome building activity, though, has resumed. The volcano had been erupting effusively since December, but there was an increase in seismic activity last week that suggested an explosive eruption could soon be on the horizon. Even though the situation has calmed down somewhat, Director of the National Emergency Management Organization, Michelle Forbes, said residents still need to be ready for any eventuality.
This is not the time for us to be complacent, not because we hear things have quieted down a bit from last week, because we can expect to have similar events. This can go on for quite a while, and we have to be prepared. So it can be it can go any direction from this point on, because we have already seen the signs that it can go either way. So we cannot rest on our laurels, if you want to put it that way, but we have to continue to prepare. We continue to engage the communities. Over the last week in particular, we have really worked on finalizing any kinks within our transportation and our evacuation planning. How are we going to move people? The resources that we need to move people, we need to have that well oiled down in the event that we're actually going to an explosive eruption. So we cannot sit and think that, okay, it's all over, because we know we end up for the long haul. as I keep saying, I believe that we're on borrowed time. The volcano has given us enough time for us to get things in order, and we continue to basically prepare. Think about the worst case scenarios, think about the different scenarios, whether it can happen during the night, during the day, and the different types of type of resources that we'll need for each event.